LVA is focused on the veterinary medicine and quite famous by quick grow up and professional. Today, Mr. Ran's topic is the Vietnam livestock market analysis. Welcome, Mr. Ran.
Thank you. Ni hao, 我是阮月英，我是越南人。Good morning, everyone. My name is Việt Anh, and I'm from Vietnam. I am the director assistant of LVA company, a trading company from Vietnam. Our company was established just 3 years ago. We are still a small trading company, but we are growing fast. We double our size every year. Despite of the downtrend of the Vietnam market, this year, we're still growing 2 times. And today, it's an honor to me to stand here and represent my company staff and give you this speech. I divide my presentation into 4 parts. The first one is the basic information. The second part is the characteristic of Vietnam market. And the third one is the veterinary pharmaceutical. And the last one is the feed market in Vietnam. So let's start. Here's some basic information for the Vietnam market. We have 95.5 million people, and I believe it will reach to 100 million people very soon. 33% of the population is living in the urban area. That means we still have 66% of population is living in the rural area. And Vietnam is in our golden age. We have 65.8% of population is in their working age. And the GDP of Vietnam is 241 billion US dollar. The GDP per capita is 2525 US dollar. And the livestock market occupies 25% of the agriculture. And this graph will show you the meat demands and production in Vietnam. You can see the number increased every year. In 2013, I just put the poultry in the black one, the pork in the green one, and the beef in the blue one. All the number is put in 1,000 tons. And as you can see, the consumption number is always bigger than production, so we have to import from other countries. And here's the meat consumed per capita of some countries like USA, Europe, China, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia. The Vietnamese people like to consume pork, and I believe it occupies about 70% of all the meat demand. And unlike the US people, you can see they like to consume beef. And the second part of my presentation is about the characteristic of Vietnam livestock market. The meat production in the past decade has grown rapidly in response to the growing demand of meat, milk, and eggs. In the past decade, the GDP per capita has increased more than 3 times, while meat production only doubled. So the country had to import more meat to meet the domestic demand, as I said before. In 2014, Vietnam spent about 486 million for importing poultry meat and beef from the United States, the Brazil, the Republic of Korea, Australia, and so on. And also in 2014, the total gross value of Vietnam livestock production was around, I think it's a big number, but it's in Vietnam though. And I can show you some number of the livestock farming system in Vietnam. In 2014, we have 70% of pig heads and 60% of pork products were produced by the household farms, and the rest are from large-scale commercial big producers. As you can see, the household farms occupy a very big number in the Vietnam market, and the number of big racing farms fell by more than 60% between 2005 and 2014. In 2014, the farms with 10 pigs or more accounted for supply about 60 and 70% of pork to the market. We have the other number for the poultry, the beef, buffalo, and dairy, and I believe that all of these one, you can see the smallholder occupied for the most one. And as I said, at the present, livestock waste management is in smallholder farm is neither monitored or enforced. From the producer perspective, the treatment of waste requires a lot of the investment in infrastructure, which small farmers can hardly afford. And so the result is that farmers tend to avoid treating animals with where possible. But in recent years, the government, they give more financial support to smallholder farmers to help them handle the livestock waste. And do you know about the CPTPP? And as you may know that Vietnam just signed to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership in last year, 2018. And when the CPTPP takes effect on January of this year, I believe, beef and milk products from Australia and New Zealand and pork and chicken from Canada are forecast to enter Vietnam market in large volume. And this, I believe, could change the consumption trends in Vietnam, causing an effect on the domestic livestock sector. And another barrier to Vietnam livestock sector is that production still depends on imported materials, especially those for producing animal feed and breeding animals. And the third one I want to mention here is the veterinary pharmaceutical. As you can see, we have the structure of veterinary service in Vietnam. The highest one is the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. And we have National Institute of Veterinary Research, which divide into number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 6, and number 7. The Department of Animal Health, we have functional divisions like aquatic animal health, inspective, quantitative drug vaccines management, and we have some veterinary drug and vaccines company. The professional centers, here is the National Center for Vets and the National Centers of Examination of Vet Drugs and Vaccines, number 1 and number 2. Here we have some important diseases in livestock production in Vietnam, like AI, especially HPAI. And the next one is foot and mouth disease. And I believe that the most popular and the most dangerous in this moment is the African swine fever, as known as the ASF. It decreased about 50% of the meat production in Vietnam this year. And the estimation cost of veterinary drugs used in the livestock production account for pig is 1.45% of production cost. The poultry is about 3.15% of the production cost, and for dairy is 0.66% of production cost. We have some top companies named in Vietnam, like National Veterinary Company, Veterinary Medicine Import and Export, Livestock, the Nova Joint Venture Company Limited, the Bio Vietnam Company Limited, and I hope I can put my company in this list in the near future. Currently in Vietnam, there are 66 companies meeting the GMP standard, and it produces and distribute 6,768 medicines on the list of veterinary drugs permitted for circulation, and more than 3,000 medicines of 40 importing countries. About the vaccines, we have here is the graph show you the market share in Vietnam. At present, there are about more than 50 enterprises producing and trading livestock vaccines in Vietnam. But 95% of the livestock vaccine it depends on importing. It's a lot. And the last part of my presentation is the Vietnam feed market. Here we have the historical of animal feed sector. The first one is enter this sector is the Proconco. They were established in Bien Hoa Đông Nai, a province of the south of Vietnam, in 1991. And 2 years later, the CP Group, one of the largest Asian animal feed producer, entered the Vietnam livestock. And so on. In 1995, we had Caju. In 2003, we had Anko and Greenfeed. In 2010, we had East Hope, a Chinese company was established, the East Hope company in Vietnam. And in 2013, Vietnam export 895 ton animal feed with amount equivalent to 200 million US dollar. And one of the biggest player in this sector is Masan Group. They participated in the market in 2015, just invested 52% stock of Proconco and have 70% ownership of Anco. Here's all the biggest company in Vietnam in the animal feed. And you can see Vietnam is listed as one of 20 biggest countries of feed producing. Vietnam started to export animal feed in 2013. And in the year of 2014, animal feed was exported to over 10 countries like the US, Japan, and Malaysia. Here's the graph. We can show you the domestic consumption, the export, and total supply. And as I said before, in 2013, Vietnam has started to export. And we have 13.26 million tons of animal feed are consumed per year. But in long term, I believe Vietnamese livestock industry is switching from household model to industry farming with large-scale business, because it's one of the key drivers to push our economic industry. And we have here the biggest name. Many brand name companies in global animal feed market are already in Vietnam and dominating the market. The biggest one is the CP. They occupy about 19 to 20% of the total market share. It has total 8 feed plants in Vietnam as of 2015, and of which they have 4 animal feed factories, 3 fishery feed companies, and a corn drying plant. And the next one is New Hope, occupied 10%. The Calgary occupy 8%. And Uncle and Aunt belongs to Masan Group. They own 12% in total of Vietnam market share. And that's all for my presentation today. And before I finish my speech, I just want to say thanks to ICAM company for inviting us to visit this VAV in Qingdao. And a personal thanks to Miss Fanny and Miss Bree, who arranged everything for us from the beginning of this trip. I hope we will have a successful VIV. And if you have any question about Vietnam market, just come to us. We are LVA company from Vietnam. Thank you.